What we'll be looking at tonight is we'll be looking at an aspect of the imagination. So at Dharma Night we normally have kind of a loose theme that we're following. So it doesn't matter if you haven't been here for the other weeks. Each week stands alone, but we kind of have a loose theme that we follow. And the theme that we're looking at over last week and the next 2 weeks is it's a theme called Reimagining the Buddha. And it's based on a paper which is basically looking at imagination and the role of imagination in the spiritual life. So in Triratna, which is the tradition this is a part of, there's a strong emphasis placed on the role of the imagination. And this paper, Reimagining the Buddha, really kind of lays out why imagination is so important and why it's important for spiritual practice. So last week, Stiramanis looked at kind of the faculty of the imagination, exploring what the faculty of the imagination is and its place of it in the spiritual life. I'll just draw out a couple of things that were covered last week just to catch us up. So imagination is really important for spiritual growth. It's an important faculty as part of spiritual growth. So reasoning and conceptual thought are important, and the Buddha did teach a lot in concepts. He spoke to the rational mind, he spoke to the conceptual mind, and it is important, but it can only take us so far. So it's an essential part, but it has a limit to how far it can go. And imagination essentially kind of bridges the gap between how far reason can take us and the goal of Buddhahood. So that's kind of the ultimate goal of the Buddhist path is to gain spiritual liberation, complete freedom from suffering, complete wisdom, complete compassion, which is symbolized by images of the Buddha. And it's the imagination that can bridge the gap between where reason can take us and kind of taking us the whole way and help us be able to be in relationship to that goal. So there's a few aspects of imagination. So one is that it's a faculty that can be developed. So often we kind of think, there's some people that are very imaginative and very creative, and some people think, I'm not very imaginative, I'm not very creative. Whereas in this paper, Subhuti and Sanghadharin really draw out that a faculty is, the imagination is a faculty that can be developed. So like we can learn a language, or like we can learn to be really good at a sport, the imagination is something we can develop to more and more full degrees. Another aspect is it's more than the individual. In a way, it allows us to access higher states of consciousness. So the imagination can take us beyond ourselves, whether that's in meditation or whether that's in engaging with the arts. Imagination can take us beyond our limited habitual way of experiencing ourselves. What it also does is it transforms objects of experience into what we might call symbols, which is they're kind of still things that we engage with in a kind of symbolic way. We can kind of see them, but they point to something deeper. They point to a deeper truth. So Buddhism's full of these different symbols. One of them is the symbol of the Buddha, and there's lots of different forms of the Buddha. There's also lots of different objects as well, which are all kind of symbols that are pointing to deeper spiritual truths. So through engaging with symbols, we can start to awaken potentialities in ourselves and start to move in the direction of the Buddha, the mind of the Buddha. And another thing about the imagination is it unifies our experience as well. It takes different parts of our experience and it can unify them in a way that can make us experience a whole. So through meditation or through experiences of art, it can have a unifying effect on us, a unifying effect on our mind. Imagination is really important in the spiritual life, but one of the reasons why we need to kind of hold it up and talk about it is because our culture has lost the value of the imagination. Imagination isn't something that's often held up as something important to be cultivated. It's normally seen as kind of something that children do and we grow out of. But so we become overly reliant on rationalism. We see the world as mechanical rather than seeing it as something alive and vivid. And we're surrounded by images that are either meaningless or their meaning's been stripped of them because we're being sold to. So often in advertising and marketing, they kind of understand our imagination, they kind of understand symbols, but they use the power of the symbols to try and sell us things. So in a way, that's the way that we're mainly exposed to the imagination now and symbols now. So it's really important that we try and cultivate the imagination, and we'll be looking at it over the next few weeks. So next week we'll be looking at engaging with beauty. The week after that we'll be looking at kind of the image of the Buddha and why engaging with images of the Buddha can help us develop on the path. But one of the ways that we use the imagination, which we teach here, is the metta bhavana. So in the metta bhavana practice, we bring different people to mind. So we conjure people up in our imagination and we try to engage with them as fully as we can. So we try and make them as vivid in our mind so that we have an emotional response to them. So we're going to do a practice of the metta bhavana in a moment. Is there anyone here who hasn't done the metta bhavana before? It's fine if not, I can just, yeah, okay, great. So I'll just, at the beginning of each stage, so it's a practice in 5 stages. At the beginning of each stage, I'll kind of say what we're doing in each stage, so hopefully you'll be able to follow along well enough. But yeah, in this practice, we're using our imagination to imagine different people, and we want to be making them as vivid as we can so that we can engage with them emotionally. So the metta bhavana, it is a practice, like I was saying here, where it unifies our experience. The metta bhavana practice has the possibility of unifying our experience because when we fully engage imaginatively, it kind of brings all of us in. And the more of us we can bring in, the more we can then transform in the practice. So we bring people to mind, and then we cultivate the intention for them to be well. And then through that, we start to transform. So if you've been coming along at all, doing the metta bhavana, you're already engaging with the imagination in the way that we'll be talking about. And yeah, if you haven't done it before, you're about to. So we're all doing it already. And then yeah, I'll say a little bit more about what we'll be looking at later after the meditation. But let's set up into meditation now. Okay, so yeah, that was us using the faculty of the imagination to cultivate the feeling of well-wishing, of metta, of loving kindness. And so we're going to look at another aspect, or a related aspect of the imagination tonight. And tonight we're going to be looking at empathy in the imagination. Yeah, so tonight's topic is empathy in the imagination. And yeah, before we go for a tea break, I want us to explore together why we think empathy is important. So what we're going to do now, we're going to get into kind of groups of 3, maybe 4 if you need to, but get into small groups. And I want you to talk about what do you think, well, what is empathy? So we could start off saying what do we think empathy is? And then also why do we think empathy is important for the spiritual life? If we're wanting to grow, if we're wanting to develop more and more positive qualities, why is empathy important? Yes, the 2 questions are what is empathy and why is empathy important for the spiritual life, for a life of growth and transformation. So yeah, if you want to get into groups of 3, we'll just have just under 10 minutes to talk about that. Okay, so yeah, it'd be great to hear what your groups were talking about then. So let's start with the first one. We have a couple of people try and define empathy, give us a definition of what we think empathy is.
I think empathy is the ability to understand someone else's feelings.
Yeah. So okay, so yeah, to do with feelings and an understanding of feelings of others. Yeah, great.
And we said not just understand the feeling, but perhaps put ourselves in their shoes. So just try to experience what they are feeling with ourselves, so that will expand a bit more and create more connection between us.
So not just have like a conceptual understanding of, oh, that person is feeling sad, but actually be able to put ourselves in the shoes of another person. Great. Okay, so I think that's a good place to start with what empathy is. Why do we think that's helpful or important in the spiritual life? Why might that be important? If we're trying to live a life where we're wanting to grow and transform our minds, why is empathy an important part of that?
I think we were saying to sort of accept yourself and deal with acceptance, it's good to have good practice to deal with acceptance with other people as well. Even if you think differently and stuff. So like learning about what the Buddha said about acceptance, it's good to have acceptance for yourself and other people and having empathy of understanding where they came from and stuff. So
So you're saying it's easier to accept something if you have empathy for it, is that? Yeah, great. Interesting, thank you.
My friend was saying that it's all about making a connection. So if you've got empathy, you can connect with someone, and then the connection is what all interactions are about. So.
So connection is a really important part of growing and developing, isn't it? That's a big part of it. Empathy helps us do that. It helps us connect more deeply. Yeah, great. Yeah. One more.
We talked about the way it's what we use to bridge the gap between ourselves and others. So I guess the extension of that is that without empathy, you can get a bit bogged down in your own issues and why you're a victim of everything. And maybe if you in the spiritual world that you want to exist in, you want to be beyond just yourself, and it's empathy that helps you do that.
Great. So it's so much our tendency to kind of shrink down around ourselves and our own problems, isn't it? Whereas if we're empathising, that can then bring us out of ourselves into connection with others and resonating more with what's going on around us. Okay, great. That's a really, really good start. So we're going to spend the second half exploring in lots of detail all the different aspects of empathy and why that's important. So we're going to be continuing to look at empathy, and I'll start off by kind of continuing when we're trying to really articulate what empathy is. So I'll just start by really saying what the Buddhist perspective on empathy is. So there's a few ways we could talk about it. The first one, if it's a vivid awareness of the existence of other people. So it's kind of a vivid awareness that there are other people there and that they're in our experience. It's also a keen sensitivity to their joys and their sorrows. So being really sensitive to the ups and downs of the life of another person, and the willingness and the ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. So maybe you said that earlier, didn't you? So the ability to really put ourselves in the place of someone else and really understand what's going on for them. So how do we develop empathy? So we're talking about empathy is important. How do we develop empathy? Empathy arises with self-awareness. So as we practice, as we do practices that help us develop self-awareness, our empathy naturally develops with that as well. So the more we're aware of our own feelings, our own thoughts, our own desires, our own wishes, the more we can understand ourselves, the more we're able to empathise with other people. So in a way, if we don't understand ourselves, we're never going to be able to understand other people. But as we start to develop our self-awareness, we're going to be able to empathise more and more fully with other people. So that would be through the practices of the mindfulness of breathing in meditation that we teach here, but also in communication with other people. Through really deeply communicating with others, we can get to know ourselves better, and then from that place we'll be able to empathise with other people more. And so a note to say that empathy is different from the emotions of what we might call sympathy or pity as well. So there's a difference. So pity is a sort of feeling sorry for people whilst not really being touched by what's going on for them. Yeah, so we can kind of see something's going on for other people. We can say the right thing. We can say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that sounds bad," while remaining a bit untouched. And at worst, feeling a little bit pleased that we're not in that situation. And in a way, we'll all feel that at times. It's not a thing we'd all want to admit to feeling, but that is things we'll be feeling. We'll see there's difficult things going on for other people, but for one reason or another, it just doesn't touch us. It just doesn't really land with us. But we can kind of say the right thing, and in a way, pity at its worst is kind of looking down from slightly above. Kind of being glad we're not in that situation. So that's definitely not what we're talking about with empathy. So empathy is a sort of feeling with. Yeah. So it's not just a recognition of emotion of another person, but it's also feeling with. So we're able to put ourselves in their shoes. We're able to understand what they're feeling, understand their difficulties, understand the troubles they're going through, and what it would be like to be with them, and really imaginatively engage with their situation. So really imaginatively engage with what it would be like if we were going through that. And the opposite, while different to pity, we are touched by their emotions. We're touched by it and we're moved by it, and we allow ourselves to be touched and moved by it. So with empathy, we really are feeling with the other person. But in real empathy, we also don't lose ourselves in our empathizing. So that would be one of the risks of that, wouldn't it? If we're feeling what other people are feeling, we might then lose ourselves in it. So if we were literally to feel the suffering of another being, it might be too much for us to handle. We might be completely overwhelmed by it. We might get completely caught up in their predicament to the point where we can't be helpful. So that's not what we're talking about with empathy either. That's kind of getting lost in kind of sympathetic distress or something. But the way that we don't do that is by it being based in positive emotion. So by doing practices of the Metabhavana, by developing that positive emotion, that means when we're then in relation to other people, we then have the strong positive emotions so that we can really stay with their suffering, we can really stay with their emotion, whilst not being... it's hard, isn't it? Because it's not that we're not affected by it. We are deeply affected by it, but in a way that it doesn't make us lose our head. It doesn't make us lose our perspective. We don't kind of narrow down around it. We kind of can keep the bigger perspective whilst being moved by it. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about being well, Stiramanis was just talking about on retreats. And on retreats, we often have groups throughout the retreat. Actually, there's a few people on the... I was in a group on the spring retreat. There's a few of us here. And there's a group of about 10 men in a group, and then all the groups met every day. And there I was just really moved by kind of the seeing empathy deepen throughout the retreat. So like I was saying, it's based on self-awareness, it's based on positive emotion. And as we were going through this retreat, different people were going through ups and downs. Different people were having good days and different people were having bad days on different days. But as the retreat went on, you could see that everyone was developing much more positive emotion. And you could see how people were just really there witnessing each other, really kind of feeling with each other, empathizing with each other, but also not getting lost in each other's troubles, not trying to fix each other, but just really staying with each other as we were going through that experience. And that's kind of what you get when you go on retreats, is that you kind of have that shared experience with other people, and you see people go through that adventure really. But that being empathized with, that being witnessed in going through ups and downs, often that's all we need. If we really want to help other people, a lot of the time they don't necessarily need our advice. They don't need our thoughts and opinions. Often what people need is they just need someone to really stay with them in what they're experiencing. And if we are going to be helpful, if we are going to be able to give people helpful advice or steer people in the right direction, it's only going to be on the basis of a real empathy. Yeah, because if we're not actually understanding what's going on for other people, it's just going to be based on some ideas, and we're going to easily not say the right thing. So it's really important when we're relating to other people that we're doing that on the basis of empathy. Okay, so yeah, that's a bit about what empathy is and about empathy with other people. The next thing to draw out is in the Buddhist tradition we talk a lot about sila, which is often translated as ethics or morality. It's basically how we act in the world. So obviously there's meditation practices, there's kind of wisdom teachings, but a big part of Buddhist practice is this sila aspect, this aspect of how are we acting in the world. And empathizing with life around us really is the basis for an ethical life. So ethics in its fullest sense is founded on empathy. So when we first learn about ethics, we probably come across the Buddhist precepts. So there's we want to act from kindness, we want to act from generosity, from truthfulness, from awareness. But we also, there's negative versions where it's telling us what we want to avoid doing. So taking life, we want to avoid lying, we want to avoid stealing, and kind of intoxicating our mind. So all of those things we want to be kind of abstaining from, because that will have a positive effect on our mind. But when we first start to engage with ethics, often it's going to begin with sort of kind of trying to suppress our unskillful tendencies. So say we're with someone and they're just really annoying us. we're in this and we're being really annoyed. The urge will be to snap at them. The urge will be to kind of shout at them at worst. And that will just be, we'll want to do that. In a way, that's naturally going to happen. But we might have then learnt about ethics and learned actually, I want to try and speak more kindly. So we kind of hold back from the shouting, we hold back from the snapping at them. And then at first, that's going to be the level that we're engaging with ethics. And it might be kind of, for example, eating meat. We might have heard that the Buddha said eating meat, it's more skillful to not eat meat. So kind of through force of will, we kind of change our diet. But that's only the beginning, doing that through kind of force of will, and that's only the beginning of the ethical path. So what happens is by not engaging with those behaviours intentionally, through that we're then not so consumed by the negative mental states that those actions kind of give rise to. Yeah. So if we shout at someone, that's going to have a negative effect on our mind. If we lie to someone, that's going to have a negative effect on our mind. If we steal, that's going to have a negative effect on our mind. So by abstaining from those activities, we're then not consumed with the negative mental states that they give rise to. And then that creates a space in our mind. Because with the obeisance of those negative mental states, a space is created. And in that space, a genuine ethical sensitivity starts to emerge. And that's what we're really trying to get to with ethics. And we're trying to get to a genuine ethical sensitivity where we can feel what's skillful, where we can feel what's unskillful, rather than it being that we're trying to kind of follow a list of rules that the Buddha put out. So, for example, at first we might stop shouting because we think we don't want to shout, but then after a while, we'll start to realise that the anger and the shouting actually has a negative effect on ourselves, and it has a negative effect on those around us. And as we start to become more attuned to that, we start to feel it more acutely when we've acted in that way. We start to feel the pain of it more acutely. And that makes us start to actually want to change, and we start to naturally change how we're acting, because we'll be having that basis of a more sensitive, ethical sensibility. So I'm wondering, has anyone got any examples of where they can see in their life through practicing they've got more of a sensitive, ethical sensibility? Doesn't have to be anything grand. Just kind of like a natural change in how we're being that feels, oh, it's actually had more of a deep effect now. Yes, do
I was struck by the fact that I used to swear a lot,
Mm.
and then just spending time with Buddhists, I found I just completely stopped. And then I started if I hear people swearing, I find it very jarring.
Yeah, yeah.
I can sort of see the ugliness of it, sort of in a way that was never particularly conscious. It was more just sort of picked up from noticing other ways of communicating and then realising.
Yeah. I remember that. I remember like talking to people about, I like swearing. But yeah, now it's just like naturally fallen away, yeah. Yeah, Darren?
I can see when I get a text which I notice that the person is a bit head up or annoyed or maybe just annoying, but my natural tendency now is to just put the phone away or not to reply. This is especially useful in family discussions.
So rather than just getting stuck, going straight into the reactive spiral or something, you kind of can step away from it. Yeah.
I was saying in the group earlier that since coming here now I cycle in and out of work, and if somebody cut me off I'd always think, not great things. But now instead I practice like the metta bhavana, and I say like, may you be well, maybe you're suffering, and I try and and I do that now all the time, and it feels much nicer.
Yeah, you've noticed the effect that has.
Yeah, totally, because yeah.
Great.
I used to work in a special needs school, and previously it was unconscious reaction. I noticed that when I'd be caught up in a student's meltdown, I'd be just part of it, part of the target. Unwittingly, I would still be caught up in a reaction of trying to almost. I want to say almost start shouting at them, this needs to stop, this can't carry on, even though that wouldn't be what I ethically want to do, because I should know better. But in the latter stages of my time there, in my practice I would notice that reaction wouldn't even come up. I would just stand and wait for the meltdown to stop, because I knew it always would anyway, and that would be the most skillful response to this, just to let go of my need to control this situation, because I can't, and that's fine.
Yeah, great. So you actually saw over time how you were not only your ability to hold back changed, but actually the initial reaction actually lessened over time. Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you those of you that shared. So ethics, because really with ethics in relation to empathy, ethics is to do with a solidarity with life, basically. So a feeling of solidarity with the life around us. And it's kind of a direct recognition of the same life in those around us as within us. So really trying to get a sense that those around me are experiencing life in exactly the same way that I'm experiencing life. It's so our tendency to think that kind of we're the main character, isn't it? It's kind of surrounded by side characters, whereas really it's kind of everyone is experiencing life in the same way. Everyone experiences themselves as the centre of the action. So ethics, empathy is a really important part of ethics. And it's an imaginative act. So we're looking at the imagination and empathy. It's an imaginative act, much more than a kind of reasoned reflection. So it's not necessarily a kind of thinking through, this happened, so they must feel like this, and then they must feel like this. It's a much more direct, immediate response to other people. And in a way, it might be completely intuitive, kind of much more in a felt sense, and kind of without thought. So it's not necessarily thinking about, there's just a kind of intuitive response to other people. And when we talk about empathy, it's one way to think about it is kind of resonating. So there's like a resonance with other people when we're with people, and there's a resonance of what's going on for them. So you can think about when certain notes are played on a piano, quite often different things around the room kind of resonate with that frequency. So things start vibrating around the room, and that's like us when we're really in tune with other people. It's like there's an emotional resonance going on that really gets us in tune with those around us. And yeah, kind of recognizing the life in the other people. I was thinking about who here's done communication exercises? We're not about to do them, don't we? But yeah, so in communication exercises, basically you're just looking at the other person, and you're just really trying to take them in, and you're really trying to be taken in by the other person. There's a few different stages with kind of saying different things to each other, but really it's a practice of just really looking at another person. And I remember the first couple of times that I did a communication exercise, it really opened my eyes to how much more fully I could actually see someone, how much more fully I could really see kind of the life in someone. It's like, even though they looked exactly the same, it was like a whole nother dimension to them had opened up. Not that I necessarily had complete access to or I could kind of articulate, but it was like just by looking at someone for that length of time, they became much more of a full person, and I had much more of a sense of them just being a person that is alive with their own thoughts and feelings and experiences. So we can do that when we're in communication, really try and just take in other people more fully. Hopefully you'll all get to do communication exercises at some point. But yeah, it's like you really get to take people in very fully and see the life in other people. Yeah, we did the Metta Bhavana earlier, and the Metta Bhavana is a part of a set of practices called the Brahma Viharas, which are different practices to cultivate different positive spiritual emotions. So the foundation is metta, so loving kindness, and in a way, metta is the active dimension of empathy. Yeah, so if we really feel with someone, metta is the active component of that empathy. So when we feel kind of an imaginative identity with another being, we naturally wish well for them. Yeah, so when we're disconnected from others, when we feel kind of alienated or aversive or separate, that empathy isn't going to arise. But if we're really with another being, if we're really with another person, if we're really imaginatively engaging with them, it's natural that then a well-wishing is going to arise from that. We'll want to act in ways that don't cause them harm, and we'll want to act in ways that benefit them. Yeah, so metta is kind of the natural active response to when we're empathizing with other beings. And yeah, this natural, if we can really be with another being, both aware of each other with that empathy, it naturally draws us closer together. And that will lead to what we call in Buddhism spiritual friendship. So in spiritual friendship, it's just becoming friends, but in the context of both wanting to grow, of both wanting to develop, both wanting to develop more and more positive qualities, spiritual qualities. And as we become more with more empathy for each other, that will naturally draw us together, and then naturally then want to help each other grow. Yeah, so that's kind of the basis of spiritual friendship, is this empathy. And then the second of the Brahma Viharas is karuna, which is compassion. And when empathy meets suffering, that's when compassion arises, when karuna arises. So if we're really empathizing with another being, if we're really in tune with another being, when they suffer, we're then going to have the response of compassion, which is a strong desire to alleviate the suffering of the other person. And the more wisdom there is, so in a way, the more we've seen through the boundary between ourselves and another being, the more naturally compassion is going to arise, and the more we're going to want to help another being. And the last one, there's four, but I'm just going to mention the first three. The last one is mudita, which is a kind of spiritual, sympathetic joy that arises when empathy meets joy. So when we're really in tune with another person that's feeling happy, that's feeling well, that things are going well for them, they're growing, what naturally then arises in us is this mudita, this joy at the positive experience that they're going through, of the benefit to them. It's kind of a genuine delight in the happiness of others. And kind of all of these emotions that I've mentioned, so kind of metta, compassion, mudita, which is this kind of sympathetic joy, all of these emotions are the basis of the spiritual community. So at the London Buddhist Centre, that's what we're trying to really facilitate and create and be a part of, is this spiritual community that's based on these emotions. Yeah, so much of the time the world isn't based on trying to relate to each other on positive emotion, whereas here what we're trying to do is make all of our conversations, our interactions, our friendships be founded on metta, loving kindness, compassion and mudita, this kind of joy, this delight in others. So that's kind of they're what empathy actually looks like in action when empathy meets other beings. And so now moving beyond human beings now. So obviously we can have empathy for other beings, and we'll feel empathy most quickly or most strongly with other beings normally. But empathy is more than just resonating with human beings. We want to be moving our empathy so it's resonating with all of the life around us. And this includes seeing the life in the natural world around us as well. So Sanghadharin, who founded this movement, he has this quote. It's said quite a lot, but I think it's really good. It says, "I would go so far as to say that a universe conceived of as dead cannot be a universe in which one stands any chance of attaining enlightenment." Yeah, so I would go so far as to say that a universe conceived of as dead cannot be a universe in which one stands any chance of gaining enlightenment. So here he's kind of really urging us to develop a view of the world that sees the world as alive, that sees the world as kind of vital and living and vibrant. And if you read the scriptures, the Buddha he lived in this world that was really alive, that was really kind of vivid and vital. And he had all sorts of communications with non-human beings as well. Obviously he taught human beings, but there's lots of stories about the Buddha teaching all sorts of different kind of spirits and devas and all of that sort of thing. So he was really, the world of the Buddha was a world that was really animated with all sorts of beings, and he was really fully aware and emotionally engaged with all of them. Yeah, the Buddha didn't narrow his awareness down on a certain type of being. He was open and he helped all sorts of beings gain enlightenment. But where we are now, we've kind of lost our sense of the land around us being alive, especially kind of living in a city, but just generally in the modern world, we've lost this sense of the world and the land around us being alive. But if we want to really grow, if we really want to practice, it's in our interest to rediscover this capacity to sense the world around us as alive, to sense the world around us as this kind of living force in a way. And we even need to empathize with the world around us. So I had this experience a few years ago. I was practicing Buddhism, but it was quite early on, and I was I was crossing the road outside Vauxhall Station, and if anyone's ever been there, it's just concrete everywhere. It's hardly a kind of beautiful scene to walk out to, but just for some reason, I don't know why, I wasn't like trying or I wasn't meditating or anything, but for some reason just something shifted in my mind, and for a short while I basically started seeing the whole world as living. I don't know quite how to describe it, but it was as if the pavements were alive, and the traffic lights were alive, and kind of the metal of the cars were alive. It was kind of a really it was kind of a strong and strange experience. But it definitely wasn't an idea. I wasn't kind of thinking my way into it. It just kind of happened. And in this state, it seemed like it wasn't only that the world around me was alive, kind of the concrete and the traffic lights. It wasn't just that they're alive, but with that aliveness, it seemed as if they were intimately connected to me. I don't know any other way how to describe it really, but it was like the aliveness led to me feeling completely connected with it. And it faded quite quickly, but it really stayed with me as a strong experience. And as I practiced Buddhism and as I kind of had more meditation experience, I can really see it's like, oh, for some reason something opened up there. And in a way it's possible to form a relationship and a connection with the world around us. So I gave an example of kind of being in the city surrounded by concrete, but we can also do it with the world around us in nature, where it's kind of more easy to feel it alive. So you can get people who kind of, they want to walk on the grass barefoot, or like swim in rivers, and I think that is a way to kind of just feel a bit more connection with the world around us. And in a way, I'm not very good at this, so I'm not. I'm more of a kind of stay inside in the my heating, in a way. So I don't have loads of first-hand experience, but I'm aware that there are people who, as part of their practice, they do have really strong engagements with nature, which really kind of brings the world to life and opens their mind and gives them much more of a sense of this interconnectedness. But yeah, I'm not very good at this, but I have been having an experience recently where in the morning I've been doing qigong, where I'm just kind of standing still, where you're meant to be standing like a tree, and then out of my window there's a tree that I look at. So I'm in the safety of my heated room, but every day I'm kind of like looking at a tree while I'm doing this, and I was only doing it because it's kind of like, oh, the qualities of a tree, they're kind of strong and grounded. But the more I've done it, the more I've actually started to feel a bit of an affinity with this tree from seeing it every day. And there's something about it where it's like, oh, I can actually, I can develop a relationship with the world around me. Yeah, it's not just people I can do that with. It's kind of the world around us, and we could do that anywhere. We could do that in Victoria Park. We could do that even by looking up. There's the moon there every night, as long as it's not cloudy. There's the sun there every day. We could try and develop more of a relationship with the world around us that would give us more of a sense of not being separate, or more of a sense of being interconnected with these things around us. Has anyone got any of their own examples where they've really had a sense of the world coming to life, or feeling connected with nature in a way, whether that's just nature in general or kind of a specific bit of nature? Yeah.
Yeah. Recently, I had this weird experience on a park bench where I wasn't like specifically thinking about the nature. It might have been more like just aesthetic, but it did feel like something. It wasn't like literally just visual, but it just felt like I wasn't seeing it, and I was sort of part of it. If that makes sense. It's like I wasn't like looking out at everything from like in me. It was just like that wasn't there, and it was just everything.
Yeah.
Together, and like that, and then it was like warmth, and like a kind of appreciation for everything, and everything appreciating me. Yeah, it was weird. It was like
great,
a few minutes, and then kind of faded.
Yeah. I think that's the kind of exactly what I'm kind of pointing at here.
Yeah.
Is this sense of like it moves towards a sense of just being part of something, being interconnected with things, rather than kind of having this self-reflexive consciousness that kind of separates us off from everything, but yeah, really gets us into life and feeling with life around us. Yeah, that's a really good example. Yeah.
I get it when it like rains, and I'm also in nature, where everything becomes really shiny, and then everything starts reflecting off each other, and then if I just look at a puddle, it'll contain like all the reflections of everything else, and then everything else is also shiny. So then that reflects off that stuff as well, and all the like reflective stuff reflects off everything else until it becomes like really like, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah. That's a lovely image, isn't it, of everything reflecting everything. There's a traditional image that's called Indra's net, which is meant to be a symbol for all of reality, where there's like a net of jewels, and in every jewel, every other jewel is reflected in that jewel. So it's kind of pointing out this interconnectedness of things, which I think that's a really nice image for. Yeah, thanks both of you. Yeah. So yeah, this kind of capacity to feel connected to life, to feel having this interconnectedness. Our ancestors definitely had this faculty, and in a way we innately have it too, but we generally kind of lose it with age. When we're younger, we probably had it much more fully, and then as we grow up, we start to lose it. But yeah, there's kind of these early animistic and paganistic traditions had much more of a sense of the world around us, whether that's kind of animals, plants, rocks, rivers, weather systems, all of these things, kind of having a life, kind of having life in them, and being connected to them. And in a way, they had this kind of sense that all of these parts of nature kind of had kind of gods or spirits kind of living in them. And I was surfing. I went surfing a couple of weekends ago, and I was kind of in the ocean, and I can really see why, when confronted with nature that's vast, you would then have a sense of, oh, there is definitely life here. I think our clever understanding of the way everything works kind of minimises the actual power of those things. Like when you're in the ocean, it's vast, and in a way it's terrifying. You have to really respect the ocean, and you need to kind of be wise in relationship to the ocean. So you could see how they would then kind of really see the life in these things in a way that we seem to have lost. Because we have this kind of, our culture is so steeped in a materialistic worldview that we kind of lose any sense of this aliveness. It's even kind of this view kind of be looked down upon or kind of sneered at, really, if you started talking about everything being alive. And in a way, we don't want to overly romanticize the past either. It's not that we want to kind of revert back, but we've definitely lost something. With this mechanistic, materialistic worldview, we've definitely lost something of this aliveness of the world, and we're poorer for that. So yeah, if we're going to have a fully empathic awareness, it needs to extend beyond people and also include all of life. So whether that's kind of plants, stones, stars, the sun, the moon, all of these things we want to have moving towards an empathy that can take in all of those things. And as we practice, as we do spiritual practice, as we practice meditation, as we practice ethics, what will start to happen is our kind of sense of ourselves will start to soften. Kind of the way that we put ourselves in the centre of the world and see ourselves as separate, that boundary starts to soften. And as that boundary starts to soften, empathy will spontaneously emerge more and more. So as we learn to pay close attention to our experience, we can start to get more in touch with this kind of low-level sense of connectedness. That in a way, most of the time we're too busy kind of trying to get our own way to be in touch with. But as we become more sensitive, as we become more wise, as our sense of separation starts to soften, we can start to tune into this kind of low-level frequency of just feeling connected to the life around us. Subhuti in this paper, he says, it's as if all the time life communicates directly with life at a level below our normal attention. So just to summarise, so it's important to develop empathy. Hopefully we've kind of looked at why empathy is important. And as we practice ethics, we can allow an empathetic, ethical awareness to emerge, so we can really allow our ethical life, how we are in the world, to be infused by this empathy. And then we can also develop it by practicing meditation, particularly the Metta Bhavana, or the other Brahma Viharas practices that allow empathy to emerge more fully. Also, if we engage in spiritual friendship, So really entering into deep communication with other people who are also trying to grow. That empathy will start to naturally emerge and naturally start to deepen. And then we can also develop a sense of the life around us, particularly in nature being alive. So we can allow an empathetic awareness of animals, plants, trees, rocks, suns, stars. Just really try and feel an affinity for them, trying to feel the resonance with the life around us. And then from that place, we can start to see through the boundary of ourselves and start to feel more the interconnectedness of things that we're really trying to get towards with Buddhist practice. So yeah, that's kind of why empathy is important. And let's just spend 10 minutes now sitting in meditation. And what I'm going to recommend doing, just all the things that we've been talking about. So empathy for other beings, empathy for animals, empathy for life around us. Just play with that in the meditation. So really trying to get a sense of the life around us being alive, empathizing with it, resonating with it, really allowing yourself to be in direct connection with it, and just see what happens with that. So I won't lead us through anything, but just kind of a sort of metta bhavana practice, but bringing in all of life around us.